Hey, gang, and welcome back to a special episode of Taking Chances. As we've talked about this year, we're going really deep behind the scenes and really showcasing some entrepreneurs. For the next 3 episodes, I've got some folks that are just near and dear to me. It's my team at HC Resource. So I've got Jerry Mazurowski, who's been working with me for, I would say, Jerry, for what is it now? The last 2 to 3 years, I'd say.
We're going on about 2.5 years now, Shaun. Actually, a little over 2 years. So
I know the time flies. So when Jerry was first joining back up, I believe it was before I got back from Europe, right? Around the same time. I know you and I were conversing on that transition, but it's a little bit of a whirlwand for me to timestamp that memory.
just coming back from Europe when we started talking. We talked a little bit when you were over there, and then you were just getting back into the States and getting things kind of settled. Is when we started to interact with each other.
So, Jerry, I know a ton about you, but I think a really good thing, I'm sure a handful of folks that listen to Taking Chances have worked with you before. As we're starting to grow this channel, I'd like to just take a couple minutes and, just dive deep onto who Jerry is. Because for my folks that are listening to this too, Jerry and I worked together at Sun Capital for a handful of years. Jerry was someone that impacted me quite a bit when I was in that business. I feel like I might have done the same for him. So it's been great to see you come back, Jerry. But why don't you just take the guests through a little bit about your origin story, where you started out. I don't even know about you before you got into hospitality, right? I've always known Jerry as this killer in hospitality, but I'd love to get to know you a little bit more before then. So just take me through your stomping ground years, if you don't mind.
I grew up here. I'm in Maryland, grew up in Prince George's County, blue collar family. Dad was a printer, mom was a secretary. And from day one, it was you work hard, you show up, you do your job, you don't complain. That was the way I was brought up. Started trying to earn money real young. 12 years old, I was selling golf balls on the side of the road near a golf course because I was able to go in the woods and go find all the golf balls that these guys had. That was, my first entrepreneur type job. At 12 years old, I wanted ice cream, so I went and sold golf balls. Right now, where I'm at this particular time, I'm a husband. I'm a family man. I'm well grounded in what I'm doing. Friendships and relationships mean a lot to me right now. Coaching and bringing people along and doing those types of things are where I'm, at this part of my career. The operation side has always been there, 37 plus years in this business. It's been a grind. I've done every single thing you could imagine in hospitality, but now it's about coaching and mentoring. That's where I'm really, and at this point in my career, trying to develop people, trying to bring people along, trying to put them to the next step.
And you do it amazing, Jerry. And I want to kind of hone back to when you were 13 selling golf balls, because I find that all of us, it's always interesting. I never heard this story from you. Talk to me a little bit about that transition. So like from the age of 13 going into your first career, like were you kind of like me where, I was going to college to be a writer. I was English lit, got my degree in psychology at the end, but I started to do hospitality jobs actually in your neck of the woods. I think my first hospitality job was technically Perkins when I was at college. And then my first real job was at Whiskey Joe's in Fenwick Island, Delaware. But talk to me a little bit about there. I mean, did you get a couple different opportunities when you were going through high school?
First real job was in hospitality, 15 years old. Roy Rogers slicing roast beef in the back. That was my first job. I was able to work there about 5 months till they figured out that I wasn't old enough to be in the kitchen, and I got fired from my first job because they never asked me for my ID, and they hired me, and I worked, and then they're like, "You're only 15," and I was like, "Yeah, like you have to be 16." So I got hired and fired from my first hospitality job within 6 months. After that, it was to be honest, to even step back farther, hospitality was in my blood. I always tell people this story when they ask me how I ended up with this. I didn't think I had a choice. My great-grandmother was a bartender at the Sheraton on Connecticut Avenue in D.C. for over 60 years. Her second husband, my grandpa Earl, was the chef there. There's pictures of me 2, 3, 4, 5 years old sitting on a bar with them, eating maraschino cherries out of the jar, sitting there because my parents were young when they had me. So they would take me down there and Nana Davis and Papa Earl would watch me and Jerry was in the bar with them. So ironically, I think I had hospitality in my blood really, really young. But first real gig was a place called Langway Sports Bar. It was a serving job, 18, 19 years. I think I was 19 years old. Sophomore in college, needed to make some money, had done all kinds of different jobs before that, moving company, landscaping company. I come from a blue collar family. I've always had a job, worked at a gas station, worked at a tennis shoe sales shop. I mean, you name it, I had done those jobs. But always had the interest with hospitality, always wanted to get into the I wanted to be behind the bar when I was 15 years old, but I got a job serving and, I fell in love with it right off the bat. There was nothing that I didn't want to do. I learned how to bartend by 19. I was serving, I was doing catering jobs, I was doing everything there was.
And so safe to say, I mean, it was definitely in your blood. Grew up, very similar to I did. It looks like you were in the industry from, environmental and association. I want to just kind of go into that time when you were there. So I'm curious. So you're, being blue collar myself as I've grown up, I've always had multiple other jobs. I don't want to answer this for you. Were you kind of shocked at the money you can make comparatively to the other hospitality jobs? I know we're going back to when you're an hourly, but is it a safe assumption that you were making a lot more in that hospitality job than maybe the other hourly positions you could get at the time?
I will never forget the first Friday I made $100 in tips. I was 19 years old and I thought I had made it to the moon. Now, this was 1990, so $100 for, you know, uh, a 19, 20-year-old kid, that was a lot of money back then. And in one shift, I mean, I worked from 5 till midnight and I made $100. So, yeah, I do understand that the green does suck you into this business sometimes. And it's easy and it's, well, let me say it's not easy to work in this business, but the amount of money you can make for the amount of hours that you have to put in is a lot better than any other hourly job.
You could see the power in it right away, right? And I mean, and I know you so well, Jerry. And I mean, this is awesome for me to hear some of this because I think even this origination story is a little bit of how you operate and why your teams love working with you so much. But, it was similar for myself, and I can only speak from the time, I'm going to college, basically failing out multiple times because I have to pay my way through college, right? So one of those things where parents made just enough money not to get any grants, but paid for the college by myself. But when I was getting into bartending, that was the first time where I was like, oh man, I can actually finish college now and, I can actually pay my bills. I can put some money away and I have enough time to study because I was in transposed to that. I was also A+ certified. So here I am working in tech, this will kind of open up to my world today. And even though I loved tech, I hated that I wasn't talking to anyone and being A+ certified. I think back in the day, we were making like $8, $12 an hour, somewhere in between there, So at the end of the hours, I didn't make enough money to even pay any of my tuition or have some dollars left in my bank account to eat. So for me, it was the power of hospitality, but also the power of what I got back from hospitality. Did you start to hone some of your skill sets that you see today, even back then when you're an hourly, right? Of being in new situations, talking to people of all different kind of lifestyles.
Well, to me, it was educational. I love having conversations. I love talking to people. I mean, we all have our regulars. We all have people that come into the bar, but they all had a different story, and getting to know people and their different stories and what their backgrounds were. There was construction guys. There was guys that I had that worked in Capitol Hill. There was guys that had writing for the Washington Post that came into this, the place that I worked at the time, and they all, had unique stories, which helped educate me, you know, being in the bar industry and having these conversations and being able to talk to, you know, the divorced lady over here, but then also the happy couple over here, the guy that's got a couple $100,000 sitting in the bank, or the guy that's just happy to have his paycheck. Those flexibilities in my personality and what I was able to develop from like that 20 to 25 was it's and I use it every single day still at 55 years old. It's how I deal with business and how I've done with hospitality, because there's all types of different personalities that we're talking to on a daily basis. And you have to be able to feel who you're talking to be able to understand, and then also be able to relate to them, whatever the situation is.
Well, and I love that. And I've said this as skill, and you've probably heard me say this, and I feel like I've heard you say similar things just in your own words. To me, the average person can be a C in hospitality, meaning anyone out there you can go pick up. And if they're good at talking with people, maybe if they're anxious, they're not going to be the best suited for this, if they've got some social anxiety. But I think the average person putting in everyone kind of wants to do a good job. I think the average person can do a pretty good C-level job, no matter what kind of training there is when we talk about hospitality and taking care of people. Like the things that require an operator to get promoted from a unit manager to a GM, then a GM to a multi-unit, then a multi-unit to VP, and so on and so forth. You've really got to hit like 15 to 25 consistent SOPs out of the park every day. I'm curious, just to hop in as we go into your transition. When you were first in these hourly jobs, Did you kind of know that this was going to be your career, or were you just following the path at the time? Like, was there something that clicked of like, oh man, I can do this? Did you see someone that maybe when you were a bartender was a general manager and you're like, man, I could do Paul's job? Or is this something that just kind of kept pulling you into it a little bit?
No, I kind of was attracted to it right off the bat, to be honest with you. I think that a lot, like a lot of people, I worked for some owners that I thought had it all, and I wanted to have my own restaurant. And Jerry's path to having his own restaurant was going to be, I'm going to have to learn how to do what that bar manager is doing. I need to learn what that general manager is doing. And I went down I never was going to be a guy that was going to sit behind the desk. I knew that. I like the action. I like the people. I like the chaos of the restaurant or the hospitality
Mhm.
industry. I hate to say it. I like the ever changing thing. I think that's one of the things that I talk to people in the business right now. I'm like, do you like things to be different every single day? Because if you don't like things to be different every single day, you're in the wrong business. Because every day is a new adventure inside of these four walls. Yes, we serve the same food. Yes, we, serve the same drinks, but you've done it just like I have. Every day is a new adventure. And that was attractive to me. But I kind of, I never had the intuition to want to do anything else. I've always been attracted to it. Always wanted to continue, see how far I could get.
Kind of truly in your blood. Talk to me a little bit about your first manager job there, because this is going to go into how you feel about operations. And I know you've had a very amazing career, and we can even talk about the time at Sun Capital and Bar Louie, how we met each other. But where was your first management job? And then just to kind of give some folks some timestamps too, from your first management job, maybe up until when we met at Bar Louie. I mean, I know your old stomping grounds because I was way too overserved a handful of times probably when you operated the Green Turtle, but I'd love to hear about, how you cut your teeth in Maryland, then got to the Green Turtle because, Mr. Frankus is going to be a guest soon. And I just think that, man, if you've watched it in my old episodes, Jerry, we're going to talk a lot about this, but the power of networking is one of my main paths forward. And the power of networking is something that you've just 100x since you've been here. So, I mean, I'm just curious about how you did that for yourself. And I think that'll be a good transition for the guests to hear what you kind of brought to the table right out of the gate as you came to Human Cap Resource.
Well, I mean, I was in my probably 25, 26 years old, I guess. Been bartending. I started bartending at 19. I got behind the bar pretty young, So I was 6, 7 years into it. I wanted to get to the next step, and then a family friend was opening a place called Champion Billiards, and I was very lucky. They gave me the opportunity to be the bar manager. I was kind of a hybrid shift lead at first. I was bartending 2 shifts a week, but doing the orders, doing the liquor orders. And that was my very first opening of a restaurant. And I had no idea what I was doing, no clue whatsoever. But they gave me the opportunity. And I ran that store for 2.5 years. I helped open a Rockville location, and, it was great. I made a lot of mistakes, definitely had to cut my teeth, but we were, you know, all learning at that same time. They were new owners in the industry also, so it didn't
That's
look as
just
bad. That location was very close to the Green Turtle and Laurel, which is kind of the Green Turtle and Laurel was my quote unquote hangout. And I got to be friends with a lot of people over there, obviously, networking. Brian Hannon, Mike Sanford, the original guys from, Billy Pacco, who's down in Fells Point, Tommy and Steve at the beach. There's only a handful of people back then at the Green Turtle. And, I guess you could look at it through networking and talking to them. When they had an opening, I'm just sitting in there having a beer, and Big B, which is his nickname, Brian, comes up to me and says, "Hey, man, I need a manager, Jerry. I'd love to talk to you." And that was the step into an 18-year career with them. I never knew that conversation was going to lead to that, but started in Laurel. We opened Laurel, the new Laurel together, and then we decided that we wanted to start the franchise, and that's where things really, really started to take off for me. And that's the brand that I was able to start my career really from a bar manager to a general manager to to a district manager, and you really start to see how this thing works.
safe assessment to quantify this for you. Maybe like the teeth cutting was kind of being completed there. And this is when you're coming into your own as a man in operations and kind of like, okay, now I'm understanding enough of this. I'm starting to put my mark on this. I got a good concept around me now. We're starting to grow. If that is the case, talk to me real quick about the people that were around you then, because I think we'll pull all this out and, everyone that you're about to talk to will be a guest this year. So, Bob Berry is there as the CEO eventually. I don't know when he came in and Mr. Frankus, but
So Bob Berry and
Talk to
Frankus
it.
were a little about 5, 6 years after. So when I originally started Green Turtle, there was four main owners: Mike Sanford, Billy Packo, Tommy Dickerson, and Steve Pappas. We call them the Four Horsemen. They were the guys that started Ocean City, Fells Point, way back in the day. Mike came in later. Mike was my direct boss in Laurel. Mike was the one that actually had the idea of trying to grow the brand and push it beyond where it was. We then I opened up the Towson location as the first corporate owned franchise. And then we did Salisbury, which is another corporate owned franchise. And I'm telling you, we sat in rooms, Shaun, where we just had open whiteboards and notebooks trying to be like, how do we do a training manual? There was no chat GPT back then. There was nothing.
Yeah.
We're literally pen and paper, what is the green turtle? What is it? What does the brand mean? How are we going to do this? And it had popularity in Maryland. Bob Frankus was one of the first franchisees that came on board, though. So he was there when we originally kind of started this thing, and he opened up the Bel Air location and had that area up there. There's another guy named Frank Iliano, who did like the Mount Airy area, and then Bob Berry came in, I would say, year two after we had opened Towson, when we were starting to, and he came in as a consultant, and he came in to kind of look at what we were doing, and he was the one that was pretty stout about saying, you guys are going to fall on your faces if you don't get this together. Like, he could see it. And Bob was the one that said, you need to start to create this box, and if you don't put these things into this box, training manuals, brand identification, you know, operation charts, all that good stuff, you're not going to go anywhere. So Bob came on first as a consultant, and eventually, as the Green Turtle Franchising Corporation started to grow, he ended up being the CEO for, I think, over 12 years. Bob will probably be the
And I
one,
want to
Bob Frankus will tell you that Bob Berry is the one that pushed it to the next level.
Well, I want to unpack some of this for the guest, Jerry, because I mean, this is an awesome conversation for you and I to have. Because I mean, for you and I, what we're probably thinking in the front of our mind is this is stuff you and I talk about doing all day, every day, and helping brands. But I think for some of the guests, like I want to just expose some of this. When a four-group founder, and I don't care who they are, has a concept and they're trying to take it from say 1 to 15 to 30 to 100, there's a lot of challenges, Jerry, that pop up. I mean, you and I know this, but I would assume you got a front row seat for the first time to probably see some very good owners and founders who cared about you, who had a great vision, who when they started to expand it were like, son of a gun, like if we don't bring in some other folks to help us do this who have done this before, it's going to be challenging. Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, that's a fair assessment. And there was a lot of arguments and a lot of franchisees that thought that they knew more than the corporate, and it bounced back and forth and back and forth. I mean, there was the tug of war. I mean, I'll be honest, I spent 10 years on the corporate side, 8 years on the franchise side. I was one of those guys on the franchise side that was pulling against the corporate side. You know, the problem with that brand is that it started as something that was unique in different areas. So Ocean City had a little niche, Fells Point, they all had their little things. And then you can't sell that though, right? You have to be able to put it
It's tough
together.
to,
You can't sell what the brand means to people in this area outside of this area. So, when people were coming to us and interested, oh yeah, I want to open a Green Turtle, but I want it to look like the one that's over there. And they're like, well, no, the standards are over here. Those are where the problems started to happen. So the four of them were smart enough to be like, we need more people to be able to come in and do this. And then eventually, that's what happened. They got some capital behind it, and then hired a head of training, hired a head of, a chef, and all the stuff that, the brand identity became exactly what it is. And was probably, one of the most interesting things I got to go through in my career. I mean, I watched this thing go from this little tiny thing up to, it was 52 units when I left. I mean, that preceded me into going to work for Sun Capital in Bar Louie, though. But I'd also, after 18 years, I had kind of, it was time to move on.
well, and this story that we're talking about, Green Turtle, could be about any growing brand. I mean, Jerry, we've had 3 to 4 discovery calls in the last couple of weeks with growing brands that are going through the same situation, whether it's a great founder or a great chef, and they're usually kicking ass and taking names. But with growth comes opportunities, and with opportunities comes operations. I'm just curious to ask this question to you, Jerry. I mean, when I say the word operations, what does it mean to you? I mean, what does that really mean? Because it's a broad term, but I feel like it's a near and dear term that folks like you and I kind of wear that as a little bit of a chip or a badge on the shoulder. I know I do at least, but what does that term operations mean to you when we just talk
So
about that?
I thought about this a little bit, and you know what? Operations to me, it means the things that people don't see, right? It's the conversations that happen in the kitchen. It's the one-on-ones with the staff to make sure they're doing all right. It's the person that's making sure that the orders are done. It's the person. Operations isn't sitting in the office and looking at spreadsheets. That's not operations. Operations is the guy that's out on the floor. I call it the chicken net. You know, the good manager that can see when that guest has that look and knows that they need to be over there. That's good operations. Making sure your team is prepared, making sure that you have the right amount of staff on board. You know, again, the guest doesn't want to see operations. They want to know on Tuesday when they come in, they're going to get this, and on Friday when they come in, it's going to be exactly the same. To me,
Yep, they
ops
want.
is all the things that happen behind the scenes that people don't see, at least in hospitality. It could mean a lot different in in different industries, but I don't have history in that industry. Hospitality
And I
operations are the things that people don't see.
well, I resonate with what you say, and you'll laugh when I say this because as being a married man for only the last 5 years, I always tell my wife if we eat at a restaurant twice, I can guarantee you it's great. And if I ever walk into a restaurant with you and tell you to leave, don't argue with me, just go. Because I think for folks like Jerry and I, we are now hardwired to see what we don't want to see. And I agree with everything Jerry is saying in hospitality. Operations are the behind the scenes systems. So when I'm projected to have a $14,000 Friday and I've got 3 buses that are showing up out of nowhere and it's going to be a $23,000 Saturday, I don't want my guests to feel this. I don't want my team to feel any other kind of pressure rather. We kind of rely on the systems, and the SOP and the packages and everything fitting in a box that Jerry's talking about. We do people, package, and product at a Human Capital Resource, and this is something that was taught to me by Smokey Hughes. But there's limitless things that can happen at a restaurant, and Jerry and I talk about this all the time. I think one of the things that Jerry does great with his teams, both when he was an employee and as an owner, is really empower his team to make the right decisions, to make sure that everyone understands the systems and understand that people will break under pressure at times, but systems do not have to. And I think, Jerry, you and I have been in a couple happy hours recently too, where, man, it's, the rails filled, everything's going on, but you kind of just go back to those systems. So it's really cool to hear this story from you. Talk to me a little bit about your.
Systems don't break, you know? The systems don't break.
Yep.
If
They can weeble and they can wobble. But what Jerry and I were talking about there too is like in hospitality, we pride ourselves on having this thing that's called intuition. And I would agree that if you've got a really good operator, a really good general manager, it's going to seem like they can predict the future, but it's only because they're so tied into their systems. They're reading their analytics. They're having the right information flow across their desk, and they are impacting the news on the floor instead of reading the news in the office. But I want to talk just really quick, Jerry, if we can go through there. I mean, Sun Capital, when you came to Bar Louie, was the first time that I got to work with you. I believe you and I got a little training scenarios together, and I was on my way out when you were on your way in. But that was a great brand for me. What I can say is I was too young. I didn't see some of the transitions that were coming that maybe you and Salerno and some of the older folks that were around me at that time. I was just so young and hungry. But talk to me a little bit about your SunCap days and then kind of what led you over to Neo's Pizza today, just so we can get the fans updated on how you and I got together.
So, I mean, Bar Louie Sun Capital was a great experience. I mean, you brought up Tony Salerno. He kind of recruited me from us. We cut our teeth bartending in Laurel, Maryland together. He was working at Fridays when I was at the Green Turtle. We knew each other. And they were looking for a multi-unit operator in the DC area. He reached out to me. I was at again 18 years with the Turtle, was kind of at that point of looking for the next thing. I thought I had gone as far as I could with them. I mean, my excitement for the brand, which I always tell people in hospitality, if you're not excited about what's on that shirt right there, it's time to move on or get out.
Mhm.
Had kind of ended, and I got an opportunity to work with a great team there. We had 7 DOs, I think, on our East Coast team at that time. All of those guys I can still talk to on a daily basis, if I wanted to. You being one of them, Mike Taylor, Tony. It's just
Great group of guys from
and
back then, Jerry. One of the
great,
best.
great group of guys. And for me, it was the next step in my career. It introduced me to what the next level of hospitality as far as, we had 109 units, I think, at that time. I was coming from 40 to 50 units to 109. A lot bigger systems. Crunch time was something I had never used before. Got introduced to inventory controls, got introduced to the word VTT, which we shaped. If you don't know what that is out there, it's your
If you
variance
don't
to
know, you'll know
theoretical
soon.
that
Yeah.
you talk about. And I learned a lot there. I learned about the business side more. Now, to me, hospitality is still about the people. It's coaching, and I took over some pretty rough units. I mean, if you remember, I got Crystal City and DC that were they were not
And
in
then the
good shape.
Rockville opening behind
Yeah.
that. No, I mean, I'll give Jerry credit on this. I mean, so I'll give my perspective. When Jerry was coming in, and this is a cool story for me to tell Jerry because I have been both guys now too, right? I've been the very much inside of Bar Louie at the time you were joining. I was probably the Jerry as a Green Turtle person, like, fuck all these new people. They don't know shit. Fell in love with Matthew, fell in love with the tutelage there, fell in love with his guys. But it was still a challenging time. I mean, what you didn't see before you got there is, we wake up one day, the COO's fired, the CEO's fired. 3 days later, there's a new COO, a new CEO. Both VPs are gone. The director that I had a really good relationship with, JD, who's one of our clients, was gone shortly after that. So the first time the new group showed up, I actually was putting in my notice. They talked me out of it there, got promoted, had a couple good years. But by the time Jerry came in, as every brand does, we're not talking any smack on Bar Louie now. It's twice changed owners, since then another bankruptcy. But that was the coolest job I ever had. And I can just say this. I mean, for me, Bar Louie was what Green Turtle was for Jerry. Got a chance to cut my teeth, had a pretty good career previously to that, working for a 5 concept group, Jerry, as a director. So I knew what I knew, but I didn't know the big end business. And then just to see some of the transitions that we made, both for the good, and then, we started to go, no fresh product. Everything went from a scratch kitchen, scratch drinks to bagged was when I started to hop out. But to see what Jerry was able to do and impact teams, because I think, Jerry, I don't want to misquote this, I think your 2 stores had 3 directors in the year before you got there. And I mean,
Yeah.
and you instantly made an impact. And even me spending time with you, the reason I just resonated with you out of the gate and for people that work with me know I can be pretty hard. But on the other side of that being pretty hard, I fucking love people and I love to win. So folks like Jerry and I just tend to not take excuses. But I quickly saw how much you actually gave a fuck about your people. And then just to talk about this a little bit, and we'll get into some field from the stories from the field. But I remember being with you in DC when you had to host that regional conference, just to talk
Huh.
about this a little bit. I think
Well,
you were in the store for the units for what, maybe 3 months. And all of a sudden Jerry's got to host this 911 new all-store meeting for the whole company, and all these new executives that I just met were going there. And I think that's when you and I became pretty good friends. But I felt the pressure for you, Jerry, as a young man, But I don't know if
and
you
it
want
was
to
a
talk
two.
about
It
that
wasn't
time a
one
little bit.
unit either. If you remember, Sean, we did Crystal City and DC. They wanted to have events at both of them. So I had 2 separate teams. I had the DC team, which was taking care of breakfast, lunch, and all that stuff on one. Meanwhile, we were prepping over at Crystal City, which Crystal City at that particular time was, I hate to say it, that was the dog. I mean, that store was, I had no, it was not a good store. And we were going to do the whole happy hour nighttime thing over at Crystal City.
I
So it was
I do remember
bouncing
that.
back and forth between not only 2 teams and 2 restaurants, but and every single DO, every single GM in the whole corporation. And I had been there a total of 4 months, I think. So yeah, there was a little bit of pressure in that situation.
I don't want to misquote who was there, but was Sonny with us at that time? Was Sonny in DC
So
with you?
Sonny, who's one of our clients now, at Alamo, was my GM in DC. Yes.
Well, if I remember correctly, because I remember the long gang table back in DC, I think that was one of the first coachable moments I saw you coaching Sonny. Because here's Jerry, who's, if you guys ever get to meet Jerry, I don't think Jerry can be intimidated by anyone when you see his size. I mean, not to be weird, Jerry, but I just see you
Come
as
on
like
now.
a man's man. Well, then there's Sonny though, and here's Big Jerry, and I'm feeling the pressure for Jerry. But if guys know how this goes, imagine the pressure of a new GM hosting this, right? So here's Jerry that's new, Sonny's new, and just the level of coaching and I don't want to say consoling, but you really prepped him for success. I feel like your team's feet might have been fluttering under the water, but no one saw it, and I think it went off without a hitch. So I just really respected the level of coaching you're able to give there.
Appreciate that.
Um, yeah, it's awesome to see. Talk to me just a little bit, Jerry. The question's not on the sheet I sent over to you, But what do you think is your number one skill set that's made you as successful as you are with your teams?
Um, my number one skill set that I think right now is building people up, to be honest with you. Trying
I
I
agree.
I truly I don't like to talk about myself. I'm not the one that wants to have the limelight on me. It's just not who I am. I enjoy watching other people do things. That's why I like hospitality. I like when the guests are having a good time. I like when the machine is like, there is nothing more valuable than me or what I think I am able to do the best is building people and giving them the best opportunity of what they can do. And I don't say that in a hypothetical reason. I'm literally like, I have servers, I have cooks, I don't know how many people that I have started with me that have stayed with me for years, but have also moved on to bigger, better careers in this business. And I just, my skill set, I think, is that I lean on the most is being able to relate to those people, coach them, teach them, and show them the right way to do things. I don't know
And you
how to put
empower
that
your
skill set. I don't know how to put that skill set into. I mean, I guess it's recognizing talent. I don't know. Um, to be honest, I think it's why I've been able to be successful with you at HC Resource. I don't need to spend 30 minutes screening somebody when we're talking about contingent recruiting and for hospitality. I can read them and I can know them. I'm an operator. I understand if they can hear it, see it, or do it.
Well, I think you're very real with people right out of the gate, Jerry, and I think you empower people to make their own decisions. I think you do an amazing job at presenting an A to Z if they don't have it for themselves. And then I think you give enough rope for someone to hang himself, but you're never going to let the rope go so long that they actually hurt themselves, and that's what true leadership is. I mean, no one likes to be micromanaged. No one wants to even micromanage. And if you got to micromanage an operator, God bless you, because they're probably not learning a freaking thing and you're going to be doing that forever. I mean, just seeing Jerry make some quick impact and just knowing how much you care about your teams, Jerry. And I know we've got a pretty good team around us at Human Cap Resource, but you and I have worked in the business long enough. A lot of those folks came from Sun Capital, and I would argue that we got to see them under high stress situations, and we kind of got to cherry pick the people that were also great at what they do, but give a fuck. I mean, because you got to have both in this business. And Jerry said something I just really want to hone in on before we kind of go over to joining Human Cap Resource. If you lose the passion in this industry, you're done. And I just mean this, Jerry, you and I have had these conversations, and we both know that we've got to be a phone in the sky sometimes for one another when we're consulting, we're on site, especially for me when I was out of it for 7 years. But I just think that human component, and I've always said this about operations, Jerry, like going back to what I said before, we're not putting someone on the moon. We're not curing cancer, but there are so many facets that you have to hit well. And typically what I've seen with myself, I think you and I've got a similar skill set. I often find that I'm coaching people how to deal with the stress that this job brings rather than the actual operations. And if I can help them deal with that stress, they have the passion, fuck man, they're going to do great. But if they don't know what to do with the stress and they have passion, we've seen where that goes for some people. I don't know if you want to hop in on that conversation at all, but I do feel like you and I are very much aligned on that skill set and both how we see the world.
Yeah, I mean, I agree 100%. I mean, we that is what it is. How do you get through the situations and deal with the stress? I mean, it could be a stressful situation, right? I had a guy, I always go back a long time ago. This is why I don't work in New York or Miami, because in Maryland, we always have last call, right? This is
Yeah.
Brian Hannon, the guy, he's like, "Hey, Jerry, I mean, we're Maryland basketball playoff game, tickets to the floor. I mean, packed house, line out the door, and I'm freaking, I'm losing it, man. I don't know what's going on. Kitchen's going down the whole 9 yards. And he comes up to me, taps me on the shoulder, and he's like, "Hey, guess what?" I'm like, "What?" He's like, "Last call's gonna come." And I'm like, "What are you talking about?" He's like, "We're gonna close." He goes, "And we're gonna clean up." He goes, "And we're gonna come back, and we're gonna reset, and we're gonna try to do it better tomorrow." And I've always sat with that, and I try to teach people that myself. You can watch the new server on the floor. She may only have 4 tables, and you still got to be able to relate to that stress that server is seeing. You and I both know she's only got 4 tables. It's really nothing. I mean, but at that moment for that young lady or server, it's the world, and it's the end of the world if we don't go there. So being able to go talk to them, pull them aside, calm them down, give them the last
Well,
call is going to come talk.
To give you credit too, and I love that story, and it's similar to one of mine on Expos, which is about, hey, stick to the systems and happy hour is going to end. I think that was for me.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, this happy hour is not forever. Eventually,
A,
and I think it was a burger night where I had
a
like
burger. I was
dollar
just about to say
tickets.
a burger night. Or same thing on a burger night. I mean,
Oh,
I went. I was in Ohio on a burger when I was first training on a burger night. I couldn't believe the amount of tickets that were on that for. But it ended.
I think you and
We
I
get through.
called each other on that. Well, and the other thing I think you do great too, Jerry, is I mean, you're talking about doing this with the server right now, and I won't use any internal names but for everybody on our team that's been a VP or a president or above, I think every one of us on our team, whether Jerry's called them or I had Jerry call them to talk them off a ledge, I think you're still doing this organically for a lot of positions. And even with some of our clients now, Jerry, I would say you're given that same level of coaching, which I always find unique in this space. Sometimes the CEO needs to hear the same thing that server did, in the space in the world that we're in today. Hospitality has a way of myopically sucking you in so close to the subject that if you don't have great systems, sometimes it's like trying to read a magazine. If you guys don't have video, with the magazine right up to your nose and the brim, and you can't read the pages. But if you just step back, like the words kind of present themselves. And that's a weird way to kind of culminate all your skill sets, Jerry, but I've just always seen you as a very direct, no bullshit kind of guy. That's the most loving human I've ever seen, that really builds systems, then people around those systems, and then holds people accountable to it. And it's really cool to see the growth. Now let's talk about, you joining us here. You've definitely seen some transitions. You've helped me so much as a consumer. You've also helped a lot with the networking. So I think there's 4 to 6 of those names we've talked about that are either channel partners with us or now clients. But talk to me a little bit about your perspective when you were joining Human Cap Resource. I think we had about a 3 to 4 year break from consistent conversations when I was overseas. But just talk to me your perspective about joining us.
Um, well, the biggest thing that was attractive is Shaun. I've always admired your success from afar. Not to blow you up, but I always look at your adventures and what you're doing, and I'm like, man, that guy's got it going on. He's got a good head on his shoulders, and we've been friends for a long time. But at that particular time, one of the things that was most attractive, and I don't know if you remember that conversation about, you and Amber having about like what tell me why I want to come work here. Tell me what it is,
Yeah.
Shaun. And you're like, you just said it, because we actually give a fuck, right? And I was like, all
Yeah.
right, I can deal with that. I know how to coach. I I can use my skill set to go consult with operators about what they need to do as far as their food costs, their liquor costs, their beer costs. But how many other people are out there doing the same thing? But how many people could say they actually give a fuck? We have an operator's mentality. We all ex-operators, and not just in hospitality, but as we're moving into what we're doing, with Ascendium and everything else, that is an operator's mentality that we know if we build the right systems and we do it the right thing, that's what's attractive. And I still think that, you my reference a long time ago when I said we had like the 5-headed monster. Like, if I can sit in my operator's chair and look at what we're offering at HC Resource, Ascendium, and I could say I would really want that, then why wouldn't I want to be a part of a team that's going to help build that? Um,
Well,
you know,
and that's
there's a
kind of been
couple other
your,
things I believe, and this is just, honesty, accountability. Those things are big things for me as far as anyone that I work with. And I think all of our people on our team have a lot of honesty and a lot of accountability. Um,
and I want to pivot and stick with this at the same time, Jerry. So like for the business owners that are out there, and I know this is challenging to do sometimes, but I know all you guys have got folks out there that you've worked with before that you respect. Jerry was owning a restaurant right now. So Jerry was someone I've respected my entire life, really respected how he treated people. And Jerry just is, it's probably weird. We've talked about this at some level, but I was stoked to get Jerry in, not just because of his operations, but I knew his team development. And then the other perspective that was very unique. I don't think Jerry and I talked about this out loud as much. You know the story now. For the 5 years I was pinned down overseas, this is probably the first time, Jerry, you never heard me talk about driving sales. We had to control a lot of our liability because me being overseas was because I was engaged. So it was a fun trip, but we were ready to be home about 2 years in, not about 5 years in. So long story short, Jerry really got to challenge me as a consumer, in a time where we were pulling in a lot of new automations, really starting to see like which direction we're going to go, right? And Jerry, I mean, you motivated more than you wanted to the ops management, right? Turning that into a bundled service. And we might kick and scream some days that we actually did that, but it's been very lucrative. But what was awesome for me to see is Jerry is my client, right? So if I couldn't pitch to Jerry and it makes sense, it wasn't like I was butting heads with Jerry. It meant I had to go back to the fucking drawing board and really look at what we've done. And I think you've also been impactful, Jerry, as we're going into now this tech. Starting to learn that a good engineer thinks a lot like an operator, right? We might be from different spaces, but to look at a problem, analyze it, what is the consistency? What do we have to do here? I really think that you've been able to impact both the operators and the engineers to say, hey, let's get the low-hanging fruit that's out there. Let's first find out where our clients are in need. Let's not just try to sell them all the shiny bells and whistles before we know what's going on, because you and I both know the more bells and whistles sometimes pulls that operator off the floor, impacting the news back to look at the bells and whistles. But it's been a really, really interesting perspective to see you kind of come here and make an impact. I want to talk a little bit about Sonny, some of the clients that you brought in, and Bob Frankus and Bob Berry. Jerry, you've been a massive help for me when I'm talking about challenging as a consumer, and then kind of me deploying some of where I think we were going to go back 2 years ago. And you instantly had two of the best relationships I could ever ask for that we're channel partners with now. I don't know if you want to hone in on that a little bit or just talk about how you had that intuition, because I think the same thing you did for teams is the same thing you're consulting for and doing for our clients now. But you actually first treated me as the first client you were going to serve in human cap resource. And I don't know if we've ever talked like this before, but I'm just curious to hear some of your perspectives of what you were seeing in reverse.
Um, I mean, you hit it off in the beginning talking about the networking, and how important networking is. And I've been very blessed over my career and this is something again that was taught to me a long time, never burn bridges in this industry,
Yep.
right? You never know where the connection is going to need to be made. Bob Franks and I opened a restaurant for him. We worked together for a long time. We separated and then we got back together. Bob Berry has always been a mentor of mine. When I started talking with you and looking at HC Resource, it was an instant, there's got to be a connection here. I'll be our first one to say, I'm not always the smartest guy in the room, and my caveman brain didn't know where the connection would be, but I knew through these networks, if I got this, those two guys with you and figuring it out, and it's blossomed into a great relationship. Bob Berry has just gotten rid of Zips. He's ready to move on to do some other stuff. I think that down the line, that might be another farther relationship for us to see where he can help us out. Obviously, Bob Frankus, as a person, I can speak the world of him. He's a good person. He's a great businessman. How can I put them together? Just like building a team. When you walk into a new restaurant as a DO, right? All of those units. Let's just take the Bar Louie. I didn't know one person on any one of those staffs when I walked in there, and Matthew handed me a plate full of, excuse my language, shit. Let's be honest. I got the shit of what was there.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, how am I going to make this look better? And of course, I'm the new kid on the block. A bunch of you, you had been there a long time. A bunch of the other people on the team were all TGI Fridays guys. So they all knew each other. They had a background. And I'm the guy that's coming out of left field from this little place, But it was about making connections and relationships. And then it starts mentoring and making, team members start to work together. I mean, it's just any business is the same thing. I mean, how do you get the right people to do the right things at the right times? And then cohesively coach and mentor them and advise them to be able to grow and be the best person they can be. It's what I don't know how to put that into a bottle. I mean, I don't want to say I'm a fix-it person. I am kind of a fix-it person, but I also like, seeing where things can grow. There's nothing,
Well,
I mean, you've done a lot more store openings than I did. I've done 17 from scratch door one, where I'm writing manuals on them. And I'm going to tell you right now, I would say it's the greatest feeling in the world when you see that store get open, the machines start to run itself, and it's a phenomenal feeling. Same thing I feel with HC Resource. When I first came in here, I had no idea what I was going to do, had no idea what I could bring to the table for you. I didn't know. I mean, I was just exploring some other avenues. The recruiting
well,
thing
I
kind
know
of came
this.
naturally, and then now here we are sitting later where, it's going to be a great thing.
I know about this from just working with you, and I know you're doing this with Bob Berry. You're doing some consulting, but I could drop Jerry into any 100-unit group, 200-unit group, 10-unit group, 3-unit group. I don't care what the size is. But if I drop Jerry in for 3 days, within 3 days, I'm going to know everything that's going on with the organization, meaning from top down. Same way. He's going to network with the people. You're going to take a look at their analytics, take a look at their profit and loss statement, track food from where we receive it to when it goes out into the guest door, look at marketing. But I mean, that's a skill set, Jerry. And you and I have talked about this too. And even though we've got a great team of operators, every one of us at that C level has a little bit different skill set. And I find that you and I have the most overlap for sure. I've done a few more new store openings. I actually love developing people way more than new store openings. I love the systems of a new store opening. I guess that's where I love, right, is, similarly to you. And this is some of the stuff I want to leave the guests with is, Jerry said this before. Jerry is one of the most humble humans you'll ever meet. And most people in hospitality are like that. We're going to transition Jerry into the actual badass he is. So just meeting some of the stuff that we've done, a lot of what we've done in ops management, just to say this to you guys, we know everyone out there can't afford 5 points top line, 3 points marketing to have us fully run your facility. And sometimes you don't want someone else to run it. But I think for some of the digital products that we have hit in the market this year, with the lead magnets, the new store opening scenarios, a lot of those S&Ps, Jerry, I just can't wait to see you getting on more video content like this and getting that voice out there. But you've done a lot of impactful work. And I think the education that you've given yourself is now what we're actually starting to put in boxes and repurpose from there. Just talk to me a little bit right now though, Jerry. So, I mean, I know you've been with HC Resource. You're doing the contingent recruiting for us. We're kind of getting you pulled into operations management. I know we got a couple of transitions going on, but talk to me just really quick. I mean, what are the kind of clients you want seeing coming your way? What do those hospitality owners look like? And what are the folks that you're just hoping pick up the phone to call you if they're in need of some help?
I'm looking for those type of groups, so maybe in that, that 5 to 7 to 10 range that are looking to get to the next level, right? Honestly, I don't, I could deal with anything, but that's really the fun time because I think any good owner operator that has a great idea, they got a passion for what they have, they can put a good thing and can get themselves to 3 to 4 to 5 units without too much help. But once you go past that 4 to 5 unit and you want to get to the next level, that's where you really need to have someone to come in and do the operational systems for you. And that's where I think I can help a lot of people out, to be honest with you. There's a bakery that just reached out to me, Ragnar here. They got 12 units. I just met with the owners 2 days ago, and we're going to see what happens with that. I mean, you and I'll discuss this, but I mean, they know they're smart enough because right now the gap between the two owners, they have a vision. The gap that's going from operations to their vision, it's not being filled in by anybody, and they know they can't do it. But they want to grow. They want to get to 50 to 100 units in like 3 years or something crazy like that. And it's a simple concept. It's not hard. Those are the type of people I like. Look, hospitality's hard right now.
It's very challenging. Let's talk about why it's hard, Jerry. I mean, you and I know this, but maybe for some of the folks that are in tech, like why is hospitality hard? We could talk about commodities, labor, all that. But I mean, you've seen this transition. If you want to talk of just someone that's been in the field, I mean, how much harder has it gotten over the last, say, 10 years than what it was
Over
before?
the last 10 years? Well, it's more the last 5 years. Post-COVID is when we
Okay.
really, to me, it just is my mind. I
Yep.
mean, post-COVID changed everything for us in the hospitality industry. I tell people all the time, I don't know why we seem to have the scarlet letter on us that we're not the cool place to work anymore. Look, I can remember back in the day opening a Bar Louie, opening a Green Turtle, opening Humagalas, opening any of those restaurants. The line out the door, people putting in applications, right? Labor number one, we don't get people that want to come work in restaurants anymore. I don't know if it's a
It's
change in
tough.
mentality. I don't know if it's just and that's one of the reasons. But again, talking about the beta with our hourly recruiting tool and what we're working on is operators don't have time to sit there and dig through hours and hours and hours of stuff. So, streamlining that. Giving people to actually give a F, excuse my language, about hospitality is another thing that's tough. Look, I have a 20-year-old son. He's more than happy to be on his Xbox talking to his friends through a pair of headphones. I physically have made him sit down and have a conversation face to face with me, looking me in the eye on many, many occasions. He's worked for me in my restaurants because that's a skill set that is getting missed today, I think, in younger kids. With that, it falls over into hospitality because that's hospitality. You got to be able to talk. We talked about this earlier in this conversation about bartending and being able to talk to multiple different people. I don't know how to change that, but that's one of the biggest
Well,
challenges.
I think you are, and so you and I both know these things when we talk, just to unpack a couple of that before we leave. And I think we're going to have an additional episode, Jerry, just to talk about the transition to hospitality, because I think we could fill a couple hours with that. And I mean this, but I think one of the things that we try to coach brands on knowing, and this is just from us jumping back into ops management heavy because we're not really looking at hourlies. The successful brands that we represent are currently carrying at the hourly level 35 to 40% more employees than previously. Now, I'm not saying full time when I say that, Jerry, meaning like
Yep.
you have really got to look at that org chart and say, I've got some answers here. I think it's a multitude just to talk about it quickly. I think just like you're saying with your son, technology changes have been huge. I think there's a little bit of a conversational barrier for the youth. I also think kids have a lot better opportunities today. I mean, like, when you and I were growing up, Jerry, there was no TikTok, YouTube, Facebook, Meta. We couldn't go out and create anything and become millionaires. And I just think when I was growing up, it was very well known that when I'm going to college, if I was going to pay any of my bills to get through college, hospitality was probably the only way without a degree where I was actually going to kind of make enough to do something. And I think today there's a lot of other options out there. But great conversation for us to unpack, Jerry. I really hope this was an episode where folks are going to get to know you a little bit. I want to give you a chance just to leave some folks with wisdom, Jerry, because as you know, I don't say this externally too much, but I would say that Jerry is my internal sage. When pressure is coming on, Jerry is the call that I make, so I might have my VPs and stuff call Jerry when they need help, but I'm always calling Jerry. Do you have any wisdom you can leave for the hospitality operators out there, or any kind of just a little bit of advice before we bring it back to the next session with us?
Well, I like using the word practice the pause. Slow down, fix the fundamentals, talk to your people, right? If you can do those three things, everything will work itself out. I was a younger manager I'm a go-getter, I'm aggressive, I'm this, I'm that. I've learned and now sometimes practicing the pause is something you got to do. You got to step back and just, and even in the heat of the moment, let me look back, see what I can do. What fundamentals are we not, what SOPs are we not hitting? What standards are we not hitting, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And you're not going to fix everything at once. If you're in a situation right now where things aren't going well in your unit, all right, take the top 1 to 2 things that you can affect on a daily basis and start there and work your way down the line. Because any one of us have gone into a consulting gig, or we walked into a unit and be like, I need to fix 100 things in here. It's impossible, right? You're going to continue to just get bad service. You're going to continue to have best guess. So I guess the best thing is slow down, fix the fundamentals. Don't try to be the hero, and take it one day at a time, man.
I couldn't say it any better than that. Jerry, I really appreciate you being here. I'm really excited for, getting some more content out with you this year and just seeing you impact some stuff. But for all the folks that have been tuning in, we've got 2 more special episodes coming. Take a look at the link. We'll have all Jerry's socials posted when he gets his lead magnet release, which will probably be February. We'll have some of that information. And if you're looking for a discovery call with Jerry, make sure you click the links that are below. But thanks for coming in, and we'll see you guys on the next one.
Take care, guys.